Dear students, hello and welcome to the 8th lecture of this course, which is named Chemistry. The course code for this particular code is CH101 and CH201 or odd and even semesters respectively. And this is G Chakraborty, and you are watching the course Chemistry, lecture number 8. That is the part 4 of the chapter, which is called Periodic Properties, right? Now, this Periodic Properties chapter is actually situated inside the module 1, which is inorganic chemistry, and this is the part 4. There is a full and final lecture of this periodic properties part, and that means we have come across already the part 3 sessions or part 3 lectures that has been done in this particular topic, that is periodic properties, right? Now let us have a quick recap of the last 3 chapters, or last 3 lectures that people have come across, right? Now the last 3 lectures include the lecture 1, that is the lecture number 5, which give us the details of the different type of models or different type of periodic tables that have been discussed in the previous time, right, in the centuries ago. Okay, we have seen that de Werner has given his own law, and this was followed by Newland's concept. This was followed by Mendeleev's law and Mendeleev's concept. Finally, the modern periodic table came with Henry Moseley and X-ray diffraction study. Right? This we have seen in the 5th lecture. In the 6th lecture and 7th lecture, we have come across different type of periodic properties that exist actually in the periodic table, which are very, very important for determining the stability of compounds, stability of ions, molecules, and atoms, right? So what we people have seen, we have basically come across 8 periodic properties, and this 8 periodic property includes the first one, which is atomic radius, right? First one was atomic radius. Now we have clearly seen that while moving from left to right or top to bottom, what type of changes are observed. I'm not discussing it here, okay? After atomic radius, we have seen what is ionization enthalpy and how it works, how it varies in a group and in a period. This was followed by electron gain enthalpy, and which was in turn followed by this electronegativity, okay? So these 4 were discussed in the 2nd lecture, and other 4 has been discussed in 3rd lecture. This is the last lecture, okay? What 4 has been discussed? We have discussed about effective nuclear charge, we have discussed about organic compounds, we have discussed about shielding effect, and we have discussed about valency, okay? This 4 has been discussed in the previous lecture, along with very small details of Slater's rule, because it is not included in our BTech syllabus, okay? Now in this particular lecture, what we are going to see, let us find out. Okay, so the screen is up and we can see that this is the part 4 of this periodic properties, and we can see the lecture highlights right here. So as you can see, this particular lecture contains S block elements, P block elements, D block elements, and F block elements, and their variations in the periodic table. So clearly we can say this particular lectures deals with the different blocks present in the periodic table and their variations, okay? So let us go to the first part. I have tried one little thing. Whenever you will see the pages, you will see whatever the image colors are, the page is having the same color. It looks quite good. As you can see, sky and yellow is the image color, sky and yellow is the page color, right? That is a little experiment that I have done for this particular lecture. You people suggest me whether it looks good or bad, okay, in the comment box. There's block elements, okay, fine. These are the basic elements that start with the atomic number 1 and group 1, okay? So the elements of group 1 are known as alkali metals, and the elements of group 2 are known as alkaline earth metals, which have NS1 and NS2 as the outermost electronic configuration. These two are basically the 2 groups that are combinedly called S block, and the elements belonging to this particular block are called S block elements, okay? if you consider the periodic table here, this particular part belongs to S block. Okay, let us see which part belongs to S block. Let us screen it out. Now you can see clearly that this particular part belongs to S block. Okay, now S block contains group 1 and group 2. You can see 1A and 2A. Basically this has come up from Mendeleev's periodic table. No need to remember 1A and 2A right now. Just go for the fact that group 1 and group 2, numeral 1 and 2. Okay, group 1 is called alkali metals and group 2 are called alkaline earth metals. Okay, now if we go for the fact that what is group 1, we will see that group 1 consists of the first element, that is lithium. Why lithium has been considered as first element? You may say that where is hydrogen? So hydrogen is not added here as group 1 because hydrogen is having an anomalous problem. You people already know it can be placed both in group 1 as well as in group 18. So it is placed in a separate position of the periodic table. So leaving hydrogen, we are having lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, francium. 6 members are present in group 1. Francium is radioactive, okay, having a half-life of 52.8 minutes, right? And cesium is the lightest metal. Okay, now group 2 is called alkaline earth metals, that we people know already, and it starts from beryllium, magnesium, calcium, strontium, barium, radium. Against this, radium is the radioactive substance, and I think people have seen green type of thing which you think which is radium. Basically it is not radium, but people sell it as if it is radium. Okay, right? So this was all about the details of the group. Now let us come back to our text. So they are all reactive elements with low ionization enthalpies. Yes, ionization enthalpy is low. Why it is low? Because losing single or couple of electrons results in the attainment of noble gas configuration, right? If alkali metals lose a single electron, then what will happen? They will get noble gas configuration, and if the alkaline earth metals lose a couple of electrons, then they will get the noble gas configuration, which actually makes them having low ionization enthalpy. Okay, so they lose the outermost electrons readily to form +1 or +2 ion, right? +1 for alkali metal, +2 for alkaline earth metal. Metallic character and reactivity increases as we go down the group. Yes, because of high reactivity, they never found pure in nature, right? They basically combine with some in form of oxides or hydrides by actually losing electrons to them. Okay, right? This basically happens for these particular things. So what else we people are having? Let's see. The metallic character reacted, okay, fine, because of the compounds of the S block elements, with the exception of those of lithium and beryllium, are predominantly ionic. So this particular group, whatever elements are present here are ionic in nature, right? Okay, so this was all about group, not group actually, group 1 and 2, that is S block elements. Again, see, whatever colors are present here, same colors are present here. This is just an experiment that I have tried. Okay. Now for this particular page, let us take yellow as the highlighting color. Okay, so the P block elements are present right here, about which we will be discussing. And as you have seen, P block element starts from 13, followed by 14, 15, 16, 17 and 18. These are the 6 groups that are present inside the P block. Okay, now the P block element comprise of belongings from 13 to 18, and this together with the S block elements are called representative elements of the main group. Right? Outermost electronic configuration varies from NS1, NS2 NP1 to NS2 NP6. Yes, as it is P block, the electrons will enter the P subshell, so it is NS1 for group 13, NS2 for 14. Sorry, I'm saying wrong. NS2 is for all, because NS depends on the S orbital. NP1 for 13, NP2 for 14, NP3 for 15, NP4 for 16, NP5 for 17 and NP6. There is full house for 18 in each period, right? At the end of each period is a noble gas with a closed valence shell NS2 NP6 configuration. We have already discussed, right? All the orbitals in the valence shell of the noble gases are completely filled by the electrons, and it's very difficult to alter the stable arrangement by the addition or removal of electrons. Yes, noble gases are noble in nature, so you cannot disturb them. You cannot say that please gain or lose electron. They will not do that. Why they will do that? If they are stable already, then why the hell they will lose or gain their electron? They will do nothing, because that's why they have very low reactivity or no reactivity, right? As you can see, helium, neon, argon has no reactivity, right? Krypton also has no reactivity. Xenon forms some compounds, and radon also forms very few compounds. Okay, so basically xenon and radon are just like those sons or daughters present in a house who does not obey the rules. Okay, that's why they form little bit compound, but others doesn't form. Okay, the noble gases thus exhibit very low chemical reactivity. Presiding the noble gas family, there are two chemically important groups of nonmetals. These are halogens and chalcogens. Very, very important. Group 17 and group 18. Let us have a box. These are halogens and chalcogens. It's better to have a screen. Okay. These are halogens and chalcogens. Now, if we see which one is halogen, these are the chalcogens, and the right side are the halogens. Okay, these are chalcogens, these are the halogens. So yellow one is chalcogen and the green one is halogen, right? Now halogens basically consists of this particular elements like fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, astatine. This 5 elements basically. Now why you people might be thinking why I'm not discussing about this, because these basically are artificial elements. Okay, we are not concerned about them. We are concerned about natural elements. Here astatine is radioactive. Okay, similarly the chalcogens contains oxygen, sulfur, selenium, beryllium, polonium. Just 5 things. Okay, so basically this halogens and chalcogens are nothing but fluorine family and oxygen family. Okay, these two groups of elements of highly negative electron gain enthalpies readily add 1 or 2 electron respectively to attain stable noble gas configuration. Like, it is quite common. This is a common thing. They're very close to the noble gases, so addition of 1 or couple of electron makes them stabilize. So what they will try? Fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine have very high electronegativity. Why? Because the attraction of this particular elements towards 1 electron is extreme, right? It's extreme. So they want at any cost, they want electron at any cost. So what they will do? They will just try to form a bond with any of the any of those elements which will readily release one particular electron, right? And they are nothing but this alkali metals and alkaline earth metals of group 1 and group 2. Okay, so they'll readily form compounds with group 1 and group 2. That's why the hydrides and not hydrides, actually hydrogen, HF, this type of compounds are quite common, and H2O is the basic unit of life. You people already know H2S is also a gas. These are readily available. Also, this NaO, CaO, NaF, these are also available. NaCl is also salt itself. So basically, they actually are having very high electronegativity, and in turn have very high electron gain enthalpy. Okay. The non-metallic character increases as we move from left to right across a period, and metallic character increases as we go down the group. So if we go down, metallic character increases. If we go up, or if we go from left to right, then non-metallic character increases. Okay. Finally, the page is looking good after removing all annotations. So let us go to the D block. The first question will say why D block elements are called transition elements. Why D block elements are called transition elements. Right? This will be the first question. And what will be the answer? The answer is quite simple. Before D, as you can see, D block starts from group number 3 and ends at group number 12. So it is quite common that before 3 we are having 1 and 2, the highly reactive groups, and after 12 we have 13 and 14, the very less reactive groups. Okay, here 16, 17 are reactive, 13, 14 are less reactive. So as the transition elements are those which actually which actually acts as a bridge between the highly reactive elements and the low reactive elements or the less reactive elements. Hence they are called transition metals. Transition means change. So as the d block elements are actually going towards change, that's why they are called transition elements. Okay, so see what is written here. These are elements of group 3 to 12 found in the center of periodic table. Yes, their position is this absolutely center. They are characterized by filling of inner d electrons, therefore referred to as d block. Yes, d subshell is filled, so they are called d block. Agreed. These elements have the general outer electronic configuration n-1 d1 ns 0 to 2. So we can write it like this. I'm writing it here. It is nothing but n-1 d to the power 1 to 10. 10 is maximum, 1 is minimum, ns 0 to 2. Okay, this will be in power, right? Whatever is written here, 0 and 2, and this 1 to something, this will be in power. Okay, they're all metals, mostly form colored ions exhibiting variable oxidation states, paramagnetism, and often used as catalysis. See, this particular points are very important for us. The first important point is most of them are colored. Why they are colorful? Because they exhibit DD transition. Whenever you will go to the coordination, I think you have studied coordination compounds in class 12, so you know what is DD transition, what is color charge transfer transition. Whenever transitions will occur, then definitely this particular elements will be colored, right? And whatever colors people see now in our dyes, in our clothes, in our drinks, whatever, all these are due to this d block elements only. Okay, however, zinc, cadmium, mercury have electronic configuration D10 and do not show the property of d block elements. That is, they belong to transition metals, but they do not show property of transition metals. That's why you can see the whole group has been marked in green, and these three are marked in yellow. Blue. Whole group has been marked in green, but these three are marked in blue. Why? Because they basically belongs to this particular group but doesn't show property like them, because they have fully filled orbitals na. So how can they show the properties? Only if there is provision, if there is a position of showing property, then only they will exhibit the property. Otherwise, how they will do? In a way, we can see that the transition metals form a bridge between the chemically reactive elements of S block and the less active elements of group 13 and the group 14, thus make them familiar name transition elements. So I've already told you that the chemically highly reactive elements of group 13 is bound to group highly reactive elements of group S, or we can say rather the S block elements of group 1 and group 2. They are bind like a bridge to the less active elements of 13 and 14. That's why these particular elements are called transition metals. Okay, let us go to the next slide. Okay, so again, beautiful color. Girls will love it. So F block elements. Finally, we have come up with the F block elements, and as you can see, there are two periods. One is lanthanum, another is starting from actinium. Okay, so we'll see what they actually are and how they actually act. So let us see. This two rows of elements at the bottom of the periodic table are called lanthanoids. That is cerium to lutetium, and actinoids thorium to lawrencium, are characterized by outer neutron configuration n-1 F1 to 14, n-1 D 0 to 1 and ns2. Last electron added to element is the f orbital. These two elements are hence called inner transition elements. Why inner transition elements? Quite simple. The f orbitals are located at the position inside to the d orbitals. So d orbitals are called transition metals. So as they are inside the transition metals, or as the shell actually is actually located inside the transition metal, so they are called inner transition elements, right? Now they are again all metals, and within each series property of elements are quite similar. Chemistry of early actinoids is complicated. Then the lanthanoids and oxidation states are, then large number of oxidation state variations are present. Actinoids are mostly radioactive, okay, and have been made in nanograms by nuclear reactions, okay. So their chemistry is not fully studied. Uranium elements after uranium are called trans-uranium elements. So very less data we can get from this particular fact, but there is some more data I'd like to give you. First of all, let us remove this lines, okay. Now let us concentrate on the lanthanoids and actinoids. First of all, what is the meaning of the word lanthanoids? Lanthanoid means elements following lanthanum, and actinoid means elements following actinium, okay. As you can see, the lanthanoids, it is written that it is starting from cerium. So basically how it locates we need to know in the periodic table. If we see the periodic table, right, I can't show you right now, but if you see the periodic table, you will see that in the top part only lanthanum and actinium are showing, and the other rest of the thing is downward, right? Why? Because actually if we have the periodic table in 3D, you would have seen that it is a series of line that is present just behind lanthanum and actinium. That's why it is said as like elements following lanthanum and elements following actinium, okay. Right now, what is the importance of this particular thing and how it originates, how this particular block elements originates? See, in the lanthanum to lutetium part, each of the electron gets attached to 4f orbital, and for actinium to lutetium part, each of the orbitals, each of the electrons get attached to the 5f orbital. Now when f orbital fills in the beginning, it is huge, but whenever it starts filling up, it quite shrinks and it moves inside the d orbital, corresponding d orbital, okay. Now what we are having here, it is written that the last electron enters the f orbital, fine. There is one important topic called lanthanoid contraction. Actinoid contraction is also there. Due to this particular lanthanoid actinoid contraction, the size of almost all the elements of one particular line is similar, almost similar, and their they have actually variety of oxidation state, but the most common occurring oxidation state is nothing but +3, okay. Neodymium and promethium, samarium, europium, they have some little bit unusual properties, and actinoids are mostly radioactive. Basically these elements have been generated in very small quantity, hence they are not in sufficient quantities, they are not made in sufficient quantities so that their chemistry can be studied, okay. So that's what about this particular f block elements. Let us go to the next slide. Now as you can see, again one wonderful colorful page has come up, and variations of spd orbitals and details energies, right? Let us see. For a given value of principal quantum number, the s orbital electron will be more tightly bound to the nucleus than p, which is then in comparison to DNF. So it is quite common thing, na? It is not rocket science. It is quite common thing that the s orbital is closer to the nucleus, and s orbital will be mostly tighted, followed by p and d and f, right? Again what it is said, s orbital electron enters will have lesser amount of energy than p and then d, right? Again it is quite sure s is down than p, then in every time you will see s is having less and p is having more, and d and f are having further more, right? So what basically it implies? It implies that the s orbital is having quite less energy, so the electron definitely will, not only electron, all of us prefers less energy, right? So definitely will move first to the s orbital then to the p orbital. If you take this particular subshell for consideration, there is a second subshell. You will clearly see that first of all, here the electron will come and then will come to this same energy orbital, that is degenerate orbitals 2p. So you can see 2s and 2p, this type of height gap is there. Height gap is nothing but gap in energy. Same happens to 3s 3p, same happens to 4s 4p. So as you can see, the lowest is s, then p, then d. Energy of the orbitals in the same subshell decreases with increase in atomic number. This we know, as the extent of shielding from the nucleus is different from the electrons in different lobes, it leads to splitting of energy levels of same quantum number. Now this is what we were talking about this particular thing, the 2p and 3p and 3d. So same in the same orbital, due to large number of electron capability, they get splitted. Thus energy of orbital depends on both principal quantum number and azimuthal quantum number, right? Low value of n+1, that is azimuthal, means higher value of energy, and low orbitals having the same n+1 means lower value of energy. Okay, so basically what it implies, it is quite simple thing, and it says that only the sp and d orbitals will be in such a way that the s orbitals will have the lower energy and p will be having more energy than s, d will be having further more energy, right? And there are degenerate orbitals p for p, d and f, and these degenerate orbitals will be having same energy. Now this is nothing new, we are already much used to it, right? And we know it very well. Okay, so this was the total discussion about today's lecture. Now let us summarize the whole periodic property session, because we have come across 4 different lectures and this is the last and final lecture. So in the first lecture, what we people have seen, we have seen the different types of periodic table that has been invented, right? It was the first lecture, that is part 1. In part 2 and part 3, we have seen what different type of periodic properties we are having and how this properties varies in the periodic table, how they affect different elements in the periodic table in the formation of compounds and all. And in this particular last lecture, we have seen the details of the periodic table, that what are the 4 blocks, what are the configuration of these 4 blocks, what type of elements are present in these 4 blocks, whether they are radioactive or not, whether they are reactive or not, right? And how they get filled, how the electrons are exchanged within them, that we people have seen clearly. And last but not least, we have seen how energies of these particular orbitals or subshells vary. Okay, so this was all about the periodic properties that is present in the BTech semester, that is present in the second year course, second semester or first semester of BTech course. And that's all for the day. And so we are having here the end of the periodic properties, right? So next day we'll come across with a different module. See, inorganic module contained atomic structure and periodic properties. We have completed both. So we will having a different module in the next day, and that different module will be nothing but physical property. I'm not telling the chapter name here because it is quite complicated. Let us see it in the next lecture. Till then, study periodic table, be safe, be happy. Thank you so much. See you in the next lecture.